Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. It's a pleasure to take a call on Part 2 of the Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf Environmental Effects Bill. Mr Chairman, the Honourable Dr Nick Smith and Andrew Williams both talked about the law being adequate and not that we shouldn't dwell upon pedantries as we consider this piece of law. But, Mr Chairman, that's not good enough. Our job here as lawmakers not to promote business or any other particular interest, but is to make law that is fit for the purpose and does the job. And that is to ensure that the words that we approve and that this House approves does achieve the objectives that not only the legislation says it needs to meet, but also that the international obligations that we've entered into are satisfied as well. And one of the important things is to ensure that particularly when it comes to this part, the regulation-making provisions are consistent with the obligations that we've entered into. When you look at clauses 27, 28 and 29, in the absence of any reference in clause 10 in a previous part to the fundamental international obligation of preserving and protecting marine life and marine environment, it is noticeable that that objective is missing in those regulation-making parts. There's no overriding or overwhelming guidance in regulation-making powers for the obligation to preserve and protect marine life and the marine environment to apply. And so that is a glaring omission. And it would be good to hear from the Minister and the Chair about what exactly is what principles and values are going to guide the regulation-making provisions in the absence of anything in the bill that is going to require the government to fulfil the obligations that we've entered into to preserve and protect. So we don't go as far as those others who have expressed concern about the Gulf of Mexico and the RENA. Those incidents. One was a genuine blowout of an oil rig. The other was a beaching of a vessel that caused an oil spill. But the critical issue for the oil drilling, whether it's on land or offshore, no matter how deep the sea, is not the depth of the sea. It is the geological structures which are being drilled into. That determines what happens. That determines the pressure at which the oil or gas comes out. That is the risk factor that needs to be assessed. Now, that is still something that's entirely appropriate for this legislation to govern. There's nothing there that points to that specifically, but it's not a question about being anxious about that particular risk, except to know that it is being properly taken care of. So the other point I wanted to talk about is Clause 50, which is the mediation provision in the bill. And what started out in the original bill as a reasonably good mediation provision that allowed the Environmental Protection Authority to send parties an applicant for a marine consent and objectors to it to go away and mediate, agree on those things they can agree on, hone down those things they can't, for that to be a subject of any ruling or further discussion. That was a good model. That's a good provision. But so the Minister's supplementary order paper amends that and takes away the requirement, not of the mediation, but of the requirement for the mediation to then be reported back to the parties and to the EPA itself so that it can carry on with its determinative role. And so that is a great pity. It's not just a great pity, it's actually not a very good process. If the parties are going to be sent off for mediation under Clause 50, which is a very sensible thing to do, get those things that the parties know they can agree on, get those resolved and sorted, get those things that they definitely cannot agree on, and let that be the subject of the determination by the EPA. That means that the mediation process must be concluded before the EPA makes a determination, that the EPA knows what the points of agreement and disagreement are. That makes complete sense. But so the Minister's supplementary order paper would mean that there is no requirement for the mediation process to be concluded, nor for there to be any report back to the EPA. Now that has the potential to waste enormous amounts of time. And the great thing about the, Mr. Chairman, the great thing about the provision as it is at the moment is that it would allow what might otherwise be time-wasting activity to be honed down, refined, and the genuine points of disagreement discovered, and then the subject of a proper hearing. Now, Moana Maki's supplementary order paper number 106 puts back in a proper and effective process and requires that the EPA not conduct a hearing of any objections to an application for consent until such time as a mediation has taken place and any agreements noted and recorded, and there is a general report back from the mediation process. That is a good thing. And I just prevail upon the Minister and ask the Minister to think carefully about that. If, as they say they are, so concerned about the business interests that are at the forefront of this debate, then one thing that business will be most appreciative of is a process that allows them to sift out those things that should not waste the time of a judicially operating body such as the EPA, and allows them to conduct their hearings efficiently, minimising cost to all parties and allowing good, sensible decisions to be taken. And with a mediation process that allows that, a mediation process that once entered into means that there cannot be a determination role played by the EPA, means that the parties actually have an incentive to, as much as possible, reach agreement on their points of disagreement. And that must be a more constructive approach to take. Indeed, the very approach that we'd like to take with the entire bill, but that hasn't been proved possible so far. So, Mr. Chairman, I simply prevail upon the Minister to think carefully about that Clause 50 and leave it so that there is some integrity to the process, that the mediation process does not become a waste of time, and that the determinative process that the EPA conducts can also be conducted efficiently and in the best interest of all parties who come before it.
Call Jackie Dean.
Move that the question be now put.
Moana Maki.